So AEW was on television again, much to no one's surprise. They started this program on February 23rd, the Wednesday night, with a 10-team battle royal where both members of the team have to be eliminated, and the winner of this gets a tag team title match against Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, the most lackluster, disappointing World Tag Team Champions in major promotion history. And never is it more obvious that the company AEW and the fans of AEW favor chaos over logic than when they know they're going to have a big lead-in coming. For some reason, people watch The Big Bang Theory. They could be watching Always Sunny or Seinfeld or Modern Family, but they watch The Big Bang Theory, a show about socially awkward nerds. Wonder why. But since they got the big lead in, they want to just start with chaos for the sake of chaos and continue that. Like you suddenly, the first time you ever drive, let's just get in the car, start it up, floor it, and see what happens. So they introduced, the only introduction in this match was for the tag team champions to come out to the stage and stand there and watch it. And that's just so they could play the song that they got the rights to. Baltimore has never been so popular. But all the tag teams were just standing around the ring, and as soon as they ring the bell, everybody jumps in and fight. It's a 20-way to start this thing, and not a single team was introduced, and the announcers just had to mention them as they came to them. So they're gonna try to keep the people with chaos, not quality. I decided to save some time and skip to the finish because the rest of it was going to be nonsense. Was I right in that assumption?
I wouldn't say the rest of it. It was certainly busy and there was a lot going on, and at times guys standing back waiting for their moment to do something. But once you got down to the last few teams, few people, it got a little better. But for a while there, it was just a big mess, and I personally don't think matches like that are really appealing to a mass audience, especially when you start a show like that. But that's just my opinion.
Well, no, it's all the opinions of the people that didn't watch the show because they started off like that. What the fuck's going on? Did we miss something? It's just crazy all of a sudden. Who's in this thing? Maybe the people stuck to it that were trying to jot down all the participants since nobody told us. The last four, once we got down to that, I started watching. Kyle O'Reilly, Dax, Little Brutus, and Matt of the Hardley Boys.
I will say, if you missed it, and this is no surprise, but when FTR and the Young Bucks squared off in that match, when they got to the point where they slowly walked towards each other so the fans had time to recognize what was happening.
Yeah.
It was almost as if people wanted a rematch.
No!
But we never got it, but people still are intrigued by those two teams in the ring together.
Well, don't worry. The Hardley Boys will come up with enough excuses so at some point the people won't be wanting that match anymore, and then they'll have achieved their mission. But on those four, Fish got eliminated, Fish was eliminated already, but then he came out and he eliminated Dax, even though he'd already been eliminated. And then O'Reilly and Matt Hardley teamed up on Little Brutus, but then O'Reilly suckered Matt because he was really, playing possum on him or playing wolf in sheep's clothing or whatever. And so Fish and O'Reilly win the thing. But again, it's to set up the Hardley Boys arguing with O'Reilly and Fish so that, Adam Cole's conflicted. What's he's going to do? As they're arguing, Adam Page just comes out and jumps O'Reilly and Fish and beats them up while the Hardley Boys stand there. And then Cole comes in, but Page routs him too. And then they throw O'Reilly back in and he gets hit with a buckshot lariat by Page. So, okay, already Fish and O'Reilly win this thing by cheating, but then any heat that they got was fairly well negated by getting a shit kicked out of them immediately afterwards. And then Page sits down in the middle of the ring and says, "Let's do story time with Adam Page, baby." to give Cole a taste of his own medicine. And as soon as he said, our tale begins in 2008, I'm like, oh my fucking God. I can't take 13 years of story time with Adam Page. But he went through the promo, trying to their history. He's trying to get people interested in this match, and nobody gives a shit. For all the reasons that we've already discussed. Adam Cole comes in with a huge pop and is immediately diminished, and immediately goes to job guys, and immediately is inserted into the play wrestling, whose friend are you? You know, oh, my friend, I'm so hurt. It's not major level betrayal amongst men and stabbing somebody in the back at the most, at the biggest opportunity when they're about to win what they've dreamed for all their lives. It's who you going to hang out with after school type of shit with these fucking morons. And Page delivered a prepared dramatic statement about somehow he's going to bury Adam Cole in a grave 6 feet under. A few people went, ooh. This was... Cole has no major wins. He's beaten job guys. He got beat by the mascot. He's challenging for the world title against a world champion that nobody views as a world champion, even himself. You can tell in his lack of confidence when he gets out there and recites this shit. And suddenly it's like this whole offshoot of their promotion that is the kids that have their dramatic issues with each other now is enveloping the world heavyweight champion in this company. What'd you think about this whole pea-picking mess?
I'll say a positive. Every time I watch Dax Harwood in the ring, I realize I wish more guys wrestled like Dax Harwood. I'm not a fan of this giant mess of teams doing this stuff. I'm not a fan of so far the Adam Cole, Adam Page program that just popped up out of nowhere. And now it's the main event we're supposed to care. I'm sure they'll have a fine match, but I don't right now care about either guy. One of the big disappointments for me has been the fact that Kyle O'Reilly has kind of been slotted right back to where he was. He's the young guy in that group that takes the beating. He'll sell the beating. I don't know. I kind of think that's the one thing NXT, although no one wanted to see the Undisputed Era broken up, the one thing they started getting right was the idea that Kyle O'Reilly could be a guy on his own. But now he's just right back to where he was, for good and for bad.
Well, speaking for good and for bad, Tony Schiavone was in the back with Bryan Danielson. That's good. He was talking about Daniel Garcia. That's bad. But then he mentions Moxley. I guess that's good. But then he's wrestling Daniel Garcia on this program. That's really bad. We'll get to that in a little while. I said that the match of the week between Raw, NXT, and Dynamite was Ciampa and Ziggler, right? That was the best match of the 3 programs. The best interview, the best segment was on AEW and came up next. Imagine that. And imagine this, it involved MJF and CM Punk. But mostly MJF. And I've seen a lot of people are talking about this on Twitter and they're raving about it, et cetera, et cetera. But this, it's an example of, Miz wouldn't have done this because Miz couldn't do this because it would have required him being somewhat real. And Miz just is the celebrity type. But MJF now finally, he didn't even break character. He didn't get away from his gimmick. It actually more explained his gimmick of why he's an insufferable prick. Because he was mentally mistreated in his past or whatever. And he's got a specific grudge against Punk because of not anything Punk really did to him, but because of what he believes Punk did. And the whole thing, he ended up, and I think I know, obviously, I don't know for sure, but I think I know where this is going, and it's even better, that some people said, well, MJF, he switched babyface, and he showed us he wasn't really that mean of a guy. Right then and there he may have, but I don't know if it's going to happen over the long term. But he told the story about the picture of him meeting CM Punk when he was 11. He had ADD and school was hell, but he was good at football. He was one of the only 2 Jewish kids to, go out for the football team. Are it Jews in the house? Were you in the house, Brian?
I was not in the house, but I was watching live, obviously.
Well, there you go. He started as middle linebacker, and his teammates threw quarters at him as hard as he could because he was Jewish. Is that a thing that people do?
I can't speak specifically to that, but I will say, despite people recognizing that there are a lot of Jewish people on Long Island, we still do deal with anti-Semitism, and some of what he dealt with, according to this promo, this heel origin story, are very similar things to what a lot of us, despite growing up in either Jewish communities or communities that have a large Jewish population or just outright large Jewish communities, you still deal with this even on Long Island.
But I don't get the idea of throwing money at somebody that you don't like. That's like an Arena Mexico thing, right? Well, you had a great match. We're going to throw the money. I would have been there with the catcher's mitt catching the money going, fuck you guys, throw some more.
Well, usually bigots aren't smart.
Well, I know what he's doing, but nevertheless. The point is he had a tough time in school. He found something he was good at, football, but his teammates didn't accept him. He cried all day, but he'd get to meet his hero that night, and that meant everything to him. And he promised himself he was going to be the best wrestler in the world, and he wanted to be like CM Punk. And he found out it was just another Friday for CM Punk, but it meant a lot to him. And then in January 2014, Punk left him when he needed him most. It was your fault, you no-good bastard. So anyway, MJF went to college, but he quit to become the best wrestler in the world. And he's not going to quit like Punk at Revolution because I'm better than you and you know it. But he laid this whole thing out, and you got to see it. And the emotion, and he was quivering, and he was kind of tearing up a little bit. And it's obviously, I don't know if, he made tons of money getting money thrown at him, but there was a lot of real in this, and he was drawing on some of that and that emotion, and people started kind of getting with him a little bit as far as, just feeling sorry for him. And all of a sudden when he's done, here comes Punk, no music, just coming out with a concerned look on his face. And Tony Schiavone, he's trying to help, but did you hear him say, I've got 5 kids. ADD is no joke. Fuck, he's got 5 kids. Fucking sexual addiction may be no joke either, Tony, for heaven's sake. As Arn Anderson said, you got enough cum in you, Schiavone, to shampoo a buffalo. But anyway, Punk comes in the ring with no microphone and just looking at MJF and says, is that true? Is that real? And MJF walked off on him. And Punk's sitting there going, maybe, is this guy for real? It creates questions. It was fucking good. And now it's more intriguing. Now does Punk believe that maybe he had something to do with making this guy act this way toward him? Whatever. Was it me? And of course, I can see, I don't think I'm ruining anybody. No spoiler here. The best way for MJ, and of course, what I predict may not necessarily happen because I can just see it making the most sense, but MJF at some point when he beats Punk, which he probably will, then he revealed, yeah, you fucking idiot, you fell for that whole fucking line of shit. I was the one running the goddamn football locker room when I was in college. Fuck you, or whatever. But I liked this, and it was different, and it wasn't the same shit we see over and over again, and MJF did a great job. What'd you think?
I thought it was one of the greatest promos I've ever seen on wrestling. It was one of the most unique promos I've ever seen on wrestling. You have a guy that the fans love booing, not in the Cody way, but in the right way, and he was able to get them to shut up and listen and start believing him and going with him. He did have tears. This fucking guy was able to make himself cry in the middle of this. And like you said, a lot of this was probably based on reality. I believe that just, based on how I grew up on Long Island. But this was an incredibly strong promo. this did a great job of laying out, like I said before, the heel origin story, but where exactly this comes from with MJF and Punk. And I'm going to say it again because I've been saying it for a while, but it's noticeable that for the last several months, the one segment that is almost always must see on AEW TV has been anything with CM Punk or MJF and this feud in this program.
Yeah.
It's been months now. You know, not everything's what you would do and not everything's what I would do, but they're not messing up. They're telling a story.
The worst thing that we said one week, we said it started going a little long. It was good, but it was a little long. That's the worst thing that we could say.
They're telling a story. They haven't rushed anything. They haven't done anything egregious or stupid. They haven't done anything to take away your ability to suspend disbelief. This, I would actually argue this may be the single greatest feud in the history of AEW. Just right now. Just based on the logic and the fact that it's connecting with fans. The dog collar match is going to be a big test, but I'm sad this feud's going to have to end at some point because the only thing that'll make it better is if each guy now goes to have another feud and those two segments become the good segments on the show. But this has been one of the greatest feuds in modern wrestling. This has easily, I think, been the best feud in AEW. Not feud amongst the executives, but actual feud on camera.
I think MJF has to win the dog collar, and I think they come up with a third match that, if not Punk's specialty, I don't know whether guys even have specialty matches anymore, but something that Punk deserves to get based on what happens in the dog collar. And then Punk can get his fucking win, but MJF has already beat him twice, first 2 times in a row, and has been elevated in somewhat of a moral victory, you might say. So yes, Punk would win in the end, but it wouldn't be the Jericho one more match kid. It would be, okay, I put you over and I put you over again, and now I'll get it, but you're more established. I think that, that hopefully they're looking towards something like that.
And this whole feud has done nothing but establish MJF in ways that Jericho feud completely missed the mark. You want to talk about Punk here? Punk was great. Like you said, no microphone, hit the ring. You look at his face. His face told the whole story. You could have watched that scene on mute. You would have known what was going on. You can't wait to see what's going to happen next. This has been the best. This has been the best thing they have there. And the only question I would have for you is, and someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, but I'm trying to think back in my head. I know he lost to Jericho, but that wasn't a pinfall. Do you give MJF his first ever pinfall loss at AEW to CM Punk?
I think he would, at the point that Punk has earned it, which if he puts him over one more time, he has. But see, the conventional wisdom or rule of thumb, or maybe even, just feeling like it's fair would be, okay, if they're going to go 3 matches, well, MJF won the first one in Chicago, Punk wins the second, but MJF gets heat and then they have a third. I don't like that setup, because if Punk wins the second, especially in his own stipulation, then it kind of puts a period on it where, okay, MJF got the fluke, but now I've established I'm better. If MJF wins again in the stipulation that Punk came up with, whether fair means or foul, then it's like, wait a minute, shit. We didn't think it was going to go this way. Why should there be a third match? MJF's already beat him twice. That's what he's saying. But there would be extenuating circumstances to where Punk would deserve and receive a rematch, and then Punk could get his win back. I can see that as having a little bit more impact than, okay, I'll take first one, you take second one, and then we'll have the rubber match.
The other intriguing thing is, going under the assumption this feud eventually will have to come to an end, and it seems like they've been teasing the MJF Wardlow thing. They're either going to pull that now or they may wait a little longer. We're not even sure. But that's a possibility for MJF. What do you think they do with Punk next?
Hopefully anything Punk wants to do, because so far I would have bet that he's been picking most of this and he's done a good job. I hope we don't see MJF versus Wardlow in any kind of series of things. I think MJF needs to introduce another stooge beholden to him to fight Wardlow to get Wardlow over, because if they went straight from Wardlow turning babyface to Wardlow versus MJF, you're either going to beat Wardlow, that's too soon, or you're going to beat MJF, and that shouldn't be done except rarely. So there's going to be a little issue there with what the fuck goes on. With Punk, I mean, I can't predict because they just, like with Adam Cole and Adam Page, just pick shit out of the blue, except with Punk having more control. That is interesting because he's worked with a variety of guys. I don't know. Who would be good to be next?
I don't know.
Well, maybe we'll find out. Hopefully it won't be Daniel Garcia again. Because the next match or next interview on this program was now the rebuttal from Daniel Garcia and 2.0 about Bryan Danielson. But they're still heels. They're screaming and screeching, and 2.0's doing all the talking. So it's a heel versus heel situation. And Daniel Garcia looks the least intimidating of the three of them between the other two 2.0 guys. They're tanned. They've got aggression. They're yelling. They're over the top. He's standing there kind of mope-faced. Him and Dante Martin, they could call them the black holes of charisma. And speaking of black holes, the Knights of the Kings of the Black Throne of the Justice League, or whatever, we're up next in a match against Pac and Penta. He's changed his name for this one. Penthouse was not Penta L0 to 60 in 5 seconds, or whatever his name is. It was Penta Obscuro. He is a very obscure fellow. This match, the spooky monster cult heels with their spooky light off, light on, or as JR said, wax on, wax off, that gimmick against the heel bastard Pac and Penthouse, who, if he ain't a heel, he just likes hanging out behind a tombstone with a shovel, accompanied by Alex Abrahantes in white face paint, dressed like a druid with a long robe. I saw this match on Svengoolie last week.
No, you didn't. I watched Svengoolie last week. That was Attack of the Puppet People? Was that it?
Something like that. I wrote, okay, this might be a clusterfuck. Again, a jump start, a four-way. All of them go to the floor. Penthouse does a dive in the first 30 seconds. Then they ring the bell to start the match. The first move of the match, Pac hits his 450 splash off the top on one of them. 1-2, he kicks out. And then they settle it down 2 in, 2 out and start a tag team match and kicking and stomping. It's literally like watching a movie in reverse. You see the finish, you see the middle, then you see them start by shaking hands and meeting for the first time in a parking lot somewhere. Who are the heels? Both teams are doing the same shit. Brody King, the more I see of him, indie to the bone. He did a head palm shoot off. He got in the ring within 30 seconds of him getting in the ring. He did a head palm shoot off. He turns his back on guys and runs to the ropes like all the rest of the Chikara pajama wearing crowd. This is so gimmicked. This whole thing was so gimmicked. They went to a break. They came back, but I didn't. I remind everybody FTR was in a meaningless battle royal. Mark and Jay Briscoe are unsigned, but we were watching these four on national television. So I got to the finish. Malachi Black goes to spray the mist, but Penthouse puts his hand over his mouth so that Malachi chokes on his mist, and Penthouse rolls him up 1, 2, 3. And then they're trying to get heat afterwards. Brody King and Malachi Black, they're trying to get heat afterwards, but it was horrible. Nothing was happening. The fans weren't caring. It was moving at a glacial pace. And then finally, was it Malachi Black that got the shovel and had Penthouse laid out, and they were getting ready to chop Penthouse's head off with a shovel. When the lights went out and they come back on and everybody screams, "It's Buddy Matthews!" And many people across the country in unison said, "Who the fuck is Buddy Matthews?" Buddy Matthews apparently has just been released, another underneath talent that was released by the WWE who did not use that name, right?
He was Murphy.
Murphy!
He was Buddy Murphy, and then Vince decided he hated first names again, and he just became Murphy.
Murphy! Well, and they made the cryptic references. Well, these fans know who he is and where he's been, and he's got history with somebody or other. I don't fucking know. He stood there forever. Malachi Black looked at him like he'd seen a ghost. He's scared. He's down on his ass in the ring. He's so scared of Buddy Murphy or Buddy Matthews or my little dog Buddy. And wasn't that Buddy was a sidekick of some woman in a Truman Capote novel that I used to... Our neighbor Dot used to read it to me when I was just a little bitty wee fellow.
Which one was that, New Wave Hookers or Cafe Flush?
No, quit now. Truman Capote had nothing to do with New Wave Hookers. He was old school all the way. But anyway, so Buddy, then Malachi Black is scared of Buddy, but Buddy starts kicking the shit out of Penthouse. And then Malachi's happy. Now he's joined them. Now we got another person in this fucking group. So it's two WWF rejects and a fucking guy from the Indies with tattoos all over him. Now security starts running down the ramp one at a time, slowly, so that Brody King, can be out on the floor and beat them up. And then they start throwing chairs into the ring, slowly, with no urgency of anything. Buddy just stomps Penthouse's face into the chair, and everybody stands there again, and then the lights go out, and they're out for a while, and you can tell that the announcers, JR lays out in a lot of these, after making fun of lights on, lights off. The lights are out for so long, I could have driven a goddamn Volkswagen Beetle out of ringside and into the parking lot. But the lights come back on, and everybody's shocked that the heels are gone, or one set of heels. Because the lights were out for 30 seconds, they probably just fucking walked out. This may have been the worst match and angle combination that they have ever done on this television program, just in terms of just shits. And it took them so long, they went over time. They went to the break at the top of the hour. They were on the announcers and then went to break at 9 o'clock Eastern. Because this fucking dreck took so long. What did you think of this fiasco?
So far, I agree with you about Brody King. Malachi Black's the kind of guy I want to say I like it because he still does some weird things, but I would probably enjoy a good competitive match with him against someone. But I'm convinced now that every single idea he has about his character is terrible, and some of his friends need to have the guts to tell him, this shit's really bad.
Yeah.
The lights out, lights on thing is so lame by this point. This time it became almost a parody of itself. You say it was out for 30 seconds. If it was 30 seconds, because it was on TV, it felt like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It felt really long, where for no reason, the lights are out. The Buddy Murphy thing, Buddy Matthews, first of all, hello wellness program. That guy is fucking jacked. Second of all, the guy's been used like a jerk off in WWE. He showed up here. The place popped for him because they do every time an ex-WWE guy shows up, as long as it's not like someone they are predisposed to hate. They pop for him. I don't know what his history is with Malachi. I don't know if it's in WWE or NXT or the Indies. I have no idea. That wasn't explained other than Malachi was hamming it up for a moment. But boy, this is uninspiring and really not good. I have not liked Malachi Black and his team, and I don't like anything about his fucking bootleg wannabe Undertaker shit. And then there's Penta. All of a sudden, Alex is a druid, and Penta has become...
Alms for the poor! He's swinging the thing, send out your dead, bring out your dead.
And Penta was already like an evil skeleton man. Now all of a sudden he's more evil. I don't know what this was. And then he got his ass kicked. So it didn't even matter to begin with.
He came out from behind a tombstone, and by the end of the match, he was buried.
There's a reason why this episode, because I saw this yesterday on social media, there's a reason why this episode lost viewers each segment throughout the whole show. And this segment was especially bad. And I know there are some people that like Malachi, and again, in the ring, he's a talented guy. But all this other shit, I don't even know if it gets on Raw. This is NXT kind of stuff, more than even Raw, but it's terrible, and I don't like it. And there are other people there who feel the same way, by the way. He's not, well, I'll just say his stuff isn't universally loved.
Find the ratings. We'll talk about those at the end of the thing, because we still have a ways to drop. The next segment, right after they just beat up 6 security guys, right, that ran down the ramp one at a time for old Brody King to beat him up, they come back and they've got 4 security guys in the ring to keep order between Eddie Kingston and Chris Jericho. So wouldn't you think that if they were going to do that, maybe they would put the beating up of the security guards right maybe after they're supposed to be seen trying to keep order amongst the main event guys? I don't know. But the jury is out now, or not jury is out, the jury is in. The question has been answered. Jericho's switching heel. Either that or he's crazy. He's the one that asked for the security to be in there because he wanted to talk to Kingston man to man. Everything that Jericho did talking about Kingston here was phrased in the way that you would phrase it if you were trying to make him the babyface and you were trying to switch heel and get the people to start hopping on you without you actually insulting the fans or making them do it on purpose. And they basically shot this with this thing. Kingston his story is that Jericho's a leech and, you know, sucks up to everybody he thinks can get him over and blah, blah, blah. And Jericho thinks that Kingston is a jobber-looking outlaw mud show fuck that he had never heard of. And, you know, but then he found out that he was good, but, you know, and Jericho's got to use a lot of phrase, the baby, when he said Kingston could be a huge baby face, and Kingston said, what's a baby face? At least Eddie's trying. So finally, Jericho condescendingly puts Kingston over, but then tells him I didn't give 2 shits about you or your sob story, and that Kingston is jealous of his success because deep down, Kingston knows he can't be at Jericho's level. And Kingston jumped back on him and said, unlike him, he doesn't bury people to promoters or leech off of others. And Kingston has that, he's got that Jimmy Valiant quality that when he says shit that doesn't make any sense, when you think about it, it still sounds good because he's saying it. And it sounds like he's just coming up with this shit off the top of his head, and he wanted to fight Jericho. And Jericho, again, said Kingston's scared of success. His uncle was a failure. His father was a failure. Kingston can't win the big one. And then Jericho agrees to a match with Kingston at Revolution. Actually, 2 matches, on May 6th and then March 6th. He corrected himself. And if Kingston wins, then Jericho will shake his hand and respect him. And this is where I liked that Jericho even did a good job at this, especially if he's turning heel and not just being a wise ass. And Kingston was good. They made a mistake at the end that I thought could have been easily corrected, but it may have been because of Jericho's outsized ego or thinking that he's the star and the straw that stirs the drink. But when Kingston said, don't give me the mimosa match, Chris Jericho. Don't give me the foolish Chris Jericho. Give me the Chris Jericho that did this and did that bled buckets in Tennessee. So Eddie's a fan of the Night of Legends. Still available at JimCornette.com, but they're soon to be sold out. And he basically said, give me the real Chris Jericho that we all came to respect and not this one, or I will, he leaned over and said, or I'll eat you alive. And that should have been the out. That should have been the last line. They should have hit the music and had a stare down and the announcers pitch out. But Jericho had to blister him back and get the last word and call for his own music. And again, a lesser name, if they're trying to get Eddie up, then he should have had the last word over the bigger name. A lesser name, it has a subliminal difference when they're told off by a star and that's the last word, rather than when the guy that, okay, he's the lesser name, but he may be the guy we want to go with in the future, so we're trying to get him up. He needs the last word. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense, yes.
Well, it didn't to Jericho.
Well, Jericho does things his own way, and then he likes to give people advice like he's all-knowing. You know, this dichotomy is so interesting because you have someone who is as real as they get versus someone who's the exact opposite. Whether you like Jericho or not, he's the consummate sports entertainer. The way he stands there, the way he moves his body when he talks, what he says, there's nothing genuine about any of that.
Trademark. Every week, let's trademark a new gimmick. Just stay ahead of it in case I need to change something, to stay hip.
And there's nothing about that really seems genuine, yet Eddie Kingston just reeks of nothing but being genuine, even if he isn't.
I don't know. I know Eddie. He reeks of a few other things if you get close enough.
The fans were clearly on Eddie's side. I think Jericho is the heel here, whether he officially turns or not. Time will tell. I will say, and I noticed this last week during the match, I think it was a tag match with Santana and Ortiz, Jericho appears to have finally gotten into a little bit of better shape.
Yeah.
It only took 3 years of all that Tony Khan money, and now he's finally going to treat it seriously.
I think it took a lot of browbeating from people other than us on social media, and he's started to do something about it.
Maybe, but I'll go back to what I've been saying for months and months and months. They have something with Eddie Kingston, and they haven't done much to capture that momentum and really go with it. I don't know where you go with it because he's not a classic worker. He's a classic personality. And I hope they don't, I hope Jericho doesn't ruin him like he's done to so many other people. But I got a lot of faith in Eddie Kingston right now because of the connection with the fans. It's undeniable.
And they love him and they want to love him more and they want a reason to love him. Let him win something once in a while, for fuck's sake.
Gets the biggest pop almost every time he comes out. It's every show. It's every building they go to. There's a reason for that. Ride it.
And here's another thing. A lot of people, especially people who have a vested interest in possibly keeping that underdog down, will say, oh, well, the underdog shouldn't succeed because he's an underdog. Well, people get tired of cheering for underdogs that never win. Underdog, at the end of the show, he saved Sweet Polly Purebred some way or another. Speaking of dogs, we had a dog of an interview segment coming up next. When job guys in this world appear and break the laws that they should fear. Now, Matt Hardy, Andre Olio, Private Party in the stairway again. Matt Hardy is this international yacht broker from Toulon, France, signing all this major talent up to the Hardy family office, now the Andre Hardy family office. And he can't even afford a fucking office. His office is a goddamn stairwell. Not even a nice stairway, but an emergency exit. Then they had another ladder match qualifier. Of course, the ladder match between 6 fucking people. 6 people. 3 of them being Powerhouse Hobbs, Keith Lee, and help me.
Powerhouse Hobbs, Keith Lee, and Wardlow.
And Wardlow, thank you. 3 of the biggest non-ladder climbing guys in the company. And now Ricky Starks is in a match against 10 to determine that Starks is going to be in the ladder match also. Now, the first guy that you would actually want to see climb a ladder is going to be in the match. But again, now we got to see 10 every show? This guy, he's big. He's got a good-looking body. And he's been in that goofy gimmick and that goofy group for so long. Does anybody remember what he really looks like under the mask? Couldn't they have, if they want to use the guy, couldn't they have washed his Sharpie marks off his chest and taken the mask off and put him in different tights, and then nobody would know that he's a job guy goof in a comedy group? They could start pushing him as somebody else and he might be taken seriously. But no, now we've got to see the same guy do jobs on every television show, because when Tony gets fascinated with booking somebody, he's going to put him on every fucking show and beat him on every show. We'll get to the main event in a minute. So Ricky Starks is in the ladder match. Surprise, surprise. And then back again in the back, the Hardley Boys and Fish and O'Reilly and Adam Cole are doing a fake argument about their lovers' quarrel. And then the TBS title is on the line. I know I'm not giving you a chance to jump in here, Brian. I'm going to let you reserve all your comments on what I'm talking about for when I get it out finished with. TBS title, Jane Cargill versus the Bunny. And no, I didn't watch this match, but Jane won. And then Ty Conti came out and got in Jane Cargill's face, but then the Bunny, who just got the shit kicked out of her by Jane Cargill, jumped on Ty Conti and they had a fake fight. And then Jane Cargill knocked out Ty Conti, and the other girl, what's her face, came in with a chair, but not to make a save. It just looked like she was bringing it to her grandmother that needed to sit down because she was moving at a snail's pace with no urgency to make a save for her friend. That right there, Starks and 10, the Hardy in the stairway, the Hardleys in the back, and Jane Cargill versus the Bunny. That was better than 30 minutes of national TV time devoted to what I just mentioned.
Tony puts way too much stuff on that show and gives them way too much time, including multiple commercial breaks, for stuff and people that don't belong on national TV. And this, look, Jade's a star in terms of appearance, but what was this? What was the post-match where the Bunny all of a sudden helps her? I don't know. And then with the Matt Hardy thing, he's not going to go away now. We'll talk about it on the drive-thru with Jeff Hardy coming in. We're going to be seeing more Matt Hardy. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Tony's keeping him around and so featured on so many things for no good reason.
But won't they let him out of the stairway? Can't they at least get him an escalator, an elevator, a bucket lift, one of those things the electric company uses? Why does he just have to be anyway? So Officer Bar Brady is back on the program. He shows up every once in a while. Otherwise, it's poor Tony Schiavone having to run back and forth. Tony's lost 30 pounds since he's worked for AEW. They got him everywhere. Officer Bar Brady is in the back with Keith Lee. Okay. Keith Lee made an incredible debut, had a wonderful match, got over like $1 million. And then the following week, as I recall, he had a pre-taped interview. Wasn't long, wasn't much. Kind of still talking like Fraser Crane, but at least he had a few comments to make. He's only been there for 2 weeks. They've got him in the back. Bar Brady asks him a question. He says 5 words, and here comes Hobbs and Starks in. And they tell him off. And Starks, in no uncertain terms, says he's going to beat him and he's going to be in the ladder match, and ain't nothing you can do about it, and Hobbs will fuck you up too. Hobbs looks at him nasty. And then they walked off. The brand new babyface star that's been in the company for 2 weeks got 5 words, then was told off to his face by the heels and not only did nothing about it, but said nothing about it. He's a dickless piece of shit. You wouldn't have been able to pay a babyface in the territory days $5,000 if he figured he was a main event guy to come in, win 1 match, get a pre-taped interview the next week, and then be interrupted and told off by the fucking heels where you got to stand there with your dick in your hand and take it, do nothing, say nothing. That's not the way you get a babyface over. If Keith Lee had been winning matches and cutting promos about how big he was and how bad he was, what he was going to do, and showing the people he was capable of doing that, and then this happened, you might have something. 2 weeks in.
I did like Starks making fun of his voice. That was funny.
Well, yeah, he might as well have made fun of his goddamn small dick and his shriveled up balls and his fucking bank account and his shitty old car. And slap him in the face and while he's down there pissing his mouth. Is everybody in today's modern society so gutless that they just allow people to just fucking talk to them like that and think nothing of it? And to where that you can't even see that a goddamn major player in the wrestling business, a giant fucking beast like that, a top baby face, you don't treat him like that. You don't talk to him like that when they first come in the company before they've ever even had a chance to get over. But speaking of any closing thoughts on that piece of business?
No, we got to see the one match and then the package on Rampage and then this promo, which I'm going to guess may have been taped in advance if he's still not wrestling. I don't know if he wrestled on Rampage, but I'd like to see more Keith Lee now that he's there. And hey, Keith Lee versus Starks, I'd like to see that, especially if they have a little bit of a history working together. Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs, we've talked about it. That's a natural thing to build to, and we got the little face-to-face, and you heard the fans react to that.
Oh, they're building to it all right. In the ladder match with 5 other guys or 4 other guys, they get a chance to fucking take the mystique off what will happen if they ever do get together, because they'll do just enough in that match to see that we didn't really want to see it as bad as we thought we did.
Hey, listen, other than Punk MJF, nothing goes in a traditional, logical way. Most AEW things, someone debuts, all of a sudden they're doing something the next week. And it's kind of this. We get to see him once, and all of a sudden he's doing this, and they're not really building him up the way you would traditionally do it. There's more of that in AEW than the MJF Punk segments.
Well, speaking of what's in AEW in every segment, Daniel Garcia. We can't do a program without Danny against Bryan Danielson. So we'll talk about the ratings in a second. This was the TV main event, and here's we start out with a 10-team, 20-man battle royal. Then we go to MJF and CM Punk. And by the time we get to the last half hour or 45 minutes of this fucking show, we've got Starks against 10, Cargill against the Bunny, Keith Lee being emasculated, and Bryan Danielson against Daniel Garcia. And not only is Danielson versus Garcia not exactly an attractive marquee match, since Garcia has been on every fucking AEW program for the last 3 months and is yet to win, ever. But also, they've done this backwards. They started with the main events and took us all the way to the preliminaries. Why would anybody stay to watch this? They built the story in that Danielson's trying to get Moxley to join him in some violence course, and he's trying to dare Daniel Garcia to be violent. Bryan Danielson's a heel. Daniel Garcia's a heel. Daniel Garcia's friends are heels. Why do we care to watch this fucking match? The only people this is going to hook are the people that just want to see Bryan Danielson work. Me being one of them. But obviously, not the entire world is not enamored of watching Bryan Danielson perform his art on job guys. And they advertise this as the main event. And Danielson, again, he's effortless, puts on a clinic. Daniel Garcia is a good wrestler. He's good with mat wrestling. He needs to fill out weight-wise. He needs some facials. He needs some personality and some charisma. Maybe some will come out when he gets older. Because what did we hear? He's 22 years old or whatever? I don't. But right now, no. Bleh. Not to be seen constantly like this. They went through a break. And the people in the building, the AEW fans, were on their asses. It's not a TV main event. It's an opportunity to see Bryan Danielson in tights. And meanwhile, Excrement is trying as hard as he can doing nothing else but talking Daniel Garcia over because he's not smart enough to realize the way you get Daniel Garcia over in this environment is talk about how instead of Daniel Garcia surprise everybody, Daniel Garcia could score an upset. No, he's not going to. You get him over by saying Daniel Garcia got to be in over his head in this one, but boy, he's putting on a surprising performance, but you know that there's no way that Garcia at his level of expertise or his level of experience is going to be able to, oh shit, but he's giving it all he's got. You don't just start saying Daniel Garcia could very well upset Bryan Danielson here. Danielson's still the best wrestler in the company. Talk like you know it. And Danielson gave him a lot, but never really lost complete control and finally stomped him and triangled him with the legs and hit the double bicep and got a tap out. And that was fine. But then, again, they have some ideas, but they don't know how to pick the people to perform the ideas. Danielson asked the fans if Daniel Garcia was violent enough, and so there was two heels having a match. Bad. They like Danielson because he's great. But then 2.0 jump Danielson from behind and start kicking the shit out of him. Jobber heels on a top guy kicking the shit out of him. So Moxley can come in from the back door to his music and shit can the heels out of the ring and then have a face-to-face with Danielson. And right then my DVR froze because they were so close to going off the air because they can't time their shit. It would have been a nice angle if they had credible heels in there to do, even mid-card heels that have won some and lost some, but was a recognized name at least, instead of the guys that for some reason, because they have pictures of Tony Khan and a Dalmatian, they've been on every TV program for the last however many months doing jobs. So this show started in the penthouse and finished firmly in the outhouse. What were your thoughts?
Like Danielson, I think he's doing great work, but obviously I wasn't too high on this late because I did watch the show live and I was a little tired by this point. And now here's Danielson and Garcia, who unfortunately at this point I'm not caring too much about. He's one of these guys, like there was an OVW or something like that for...
Yeah.
Or your OVW, not modern OVW. There was a Jim Cornette's OVW, and you had the Daniel Garcias and the Dante Martins and these guys that can work with each other in that environment and learn. It would be one thing, but instead, Daniel Garcia arrived. I thought showed a lot of potential. I like the way he works. I even like his look. But we've seen him on TV. Like you just said, he never wins a match. He's aligned with 2.0, who, although they show some charisma,
never win a match.
Never win a match. So they're treated...
going to say, but they won on YouTube.
And who watched? I didn't. So
the same people that's already watching the TV program, just not as many of them.
Moxley having to have his music played so he could randomly show up with a security guard to walk through the fans. Where was he? Was he getting a hot dog? Was he hitting the head? Where was he? Where was John Moxley that he was prepared?
He was waiting just for the exact moment when he figured that Danielson needed him the most. What a friend.
Not really feeling the Danielson-Moxley stuff. And that's really all I have to say about this. I didn't like the way the show ended. I thought the show was downhill after the MJF segment. Naturally, it's one of the all-time great segments, but there was also a lot of bad shit on this show. Although, best Chris Jericho segment in a long time. A lot of that's due to Kingston, but I also think Jericho stepped it up a little bit. But
I agree with that.
Also a lot of really bad shit on the show. That Pac match may be I say Pac match. Pac and Bizarro Penta with Druid Alex versus the Guardians of the Night of Black with their friend Buddy. That's an all-time bad thing if you really think about it. But other than that, not a great show.
It fell off a cliff after Jericho, I'll tell you that. So what were the ratings on this thing? Where'd they start and where'd they finish up?
Well, let me get this. The overall ratings for the show, 1.10 million viewers.
No. Not 1.10 million.
Oh, excuse me, 1,010,000 viewers. Excuse me, I'm looking at this weird way this person laid it out. But let me go to another one here, and let me give this person credit. Brandon Thurston on Twitter, @Brandon Thurston. did a breakdown of the quarter hours, and this is pretty handy here. So the show started with 1,088,000 for the Tag Team Battle Royal. Segment 2 went down to 1,048,000. This was the continuation of the Tag Team Battle Royal, the Adam Page live promo, and Danielson's promo in the back, as well as an ad break. Segment 3, 1,038,000 viewers. This is MJF's live promo, as well as the Daniel Garcia promo and tag team match entrances. The tag team match being segment 4, where 1 million.
So they were within 50,000 people from the start through MJF and Punk and the start of that offensive tag team match.
The debut of Buddy Murphy's segment drew 1,010,000 viewers, which ended up being the overall average for the night. Segment 5, the first segment of Hour 2, which is Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa video, an ad break, and then Jericho and Kingston's live promo, 997,000 viewers. Segment 6, which is 3 more minutes of Jericho Kingston, Andrade Hardy Private Party promo, and then Ricky Starks versus 10, as well as the Fish O'Reilly Bucks promo and the Jade Cargill entrance. That's a lot. 986,000 viewers.
Good Lord, they kept more than I thought they would have for all that variety of hoopla.
Well, segment 7, which was Jade Cargill versus the Bunny, with the Ty Conti angle and the Keith Lee promo, as well as another ad break and a picture-in-picture here, 969,000 viewers. And finally, segment 8, Bryan Danielson versus Daniel Garcia, which included a picture-in-picture. That did 942,000 viewers.
Okay, I am amazed, actually. They went through that whole show and only lost, 140,000 people from start to finish, because the last, especially hour of this Danielson wasn't rotten in his match with Garcia. It's just a rotten match to put in a TV main event, but the rest of that stuff, these people are durable. The AEW fans, they're durable. They're a hardy breed. They'll sit and watch anything. If you were shoving toothpicks underneath their fingernails and toenails, they might not change the channel, because that's the only thing I can think of. It'd be more painful than watching the last part of this program. So just to lose 140,000, that ain't bad.
I guess the question will be, where do they start next week? Because as we've seen, the week before sometimes leads to what happens the next time.
Yeah, well, and I've always said that if you get a bad rating on a show from the start, it's because you had a shitty show the last week. If you start good and then the final rating of the last part of the show sucks, but you started good, that means you did a crummy show this week.